evening for me. Good afternoon for you. The 6th of September. How are you doing, Jean-Claude?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm fine. I'm fine. So for everyone knows you, Jean-Claude from BeyondMystic 3. But we have got so much to talk about tonight. I mean, every time you cannot plan for these sessions in advance, because once you've done your planning, everything changes, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Yes. Things are getting very weird in the woo right now. That's for sure. Thank you for having me on, Catherine. I always love being on your show.
It's such a joy to have you on. It's, you know, you were in the control driving seat last time for the last couple of times. So my turn tonight, and we've already got quite a few people joining us, which is absolutely fantastic. And Harry, yes, we will be talking about which matrix we're in and which level of which matrix we're all viewing, because it's getting rather confusing, isn't it?
Absolutely. I wanted to start maybe by giving an update to the audience. So first of all, a big congratulations to Catherine. She's upped her game with this beautiful streamlined layout that she has now. That's absolutely beautiful, Catherine. Really happy for you. You and I had spent some time working this out, and I think the audience is really going to appreciate all of this new multimedia, the way you do your videos. So congratulations for that, Catherine.
Couldn't have done it without you. You've been helping me so much, and considering how busy you are, this is just fantastic, and it just shows a lot about your personality. So thank you. But
thank you.
Where are you at the moment? Because you had your trip away. I watched your video with Janine where you were explaining about how then when you were away, we've got to obviously be careful. We're live streaming with our words tonight, but they'd introduce some extra checks, which meant you weren't allowed into certain areas. Things are really changing. Where are you? How are you feeling at the moment before we get stuck into the nitty-gritty?
Well, we're feeling okay. I mean, Sarah and I absolutely wanted to take a few days off here because we kind of feel that we're on this verge of who knows what. I mean, the world is kind of on this tipping point right now. And I had been running the channel so hard in the last couple of months. And then, of course, I got my Patreon deleted. I've got the attacks on the websites. I went through all of, fixing all of that stuff, being stressed and working 20 hours a day for a whole month. And then I realized, okay, it appears that nothing's broken. Let me take a day or two off here and enjoy life here a little bit with the family before things get even crazier. So that's why we took those 2 days off. But yes, while on vacation, what was funny is we were vacationing in the adjacent province. And on the last day, they were implementing their new paperwork requirements. Let's just put it that way here. And so that morning, as we woke up and we went to the lounge for breakfast at our hotel, we were faced with the paperwork police, and they're like, "Excuse me, sir, you're not allowed to be in here." I'm like, "Well, yes, I am. I'm on the floor. I'm on this floor and I have breakfast included." And they're like, "Well, yeah, but you don't have your papers." I'm like, "No, I'm from a different province. We don't have papers in our province, at least yet." It wasn't announced at that point. And so they're like, "Well, no, so excuse me, you can't come in." And we're like, "Oh, come on, really? Like, I was just here 2 minutes ago, was fine, and now it's not, right?" And I'm like, "Well, can I at least get a coffee to bring to the room?" It's like, "Nope." Turn around, sir. I'm like, "Come on." And what was funny too, Catherine, like everybody who was already sitting in the restaurant, who are from that province, who presumably had their papers, they were kind of looking at us at the door, not being able to come in, like, "Oh, look at the poor little leopards, lepers. They have to return." It was kind of humiliating at the same time, So it's just like, wow. And as we checked out, this was the day we were checking out, anyway. But in the lobby, everybody was like, I don't want to use swear words here, but there was people swearing from it was just absolutely a debacle. And so many more other people were having the same issues, going to the pool, going to the gym. It wasn't just the restaurant. So all of the things that are deemed, I guess, unnecessary, you need to have your paperwork to attend. So it's pretty crazy. And now here in this province, they just announced that they're going to try to implement that at the end of the month. And the big issue is, well, how do they manage this? Like, they're making police out of normal citizens, restaurant, shop operators, to waiters, to all of this. And it's just, it's frustrating. Put it that way.
It's unbelievable, isn't it? And I think we're all suffering from you know, people think we didn't think it would get this far. And this is such a lesson. This has been a continual story for the last things. And the last week, I mean, you have become my go-to channel. And I'm not just saying that because you're on there, because what I wanted to just ask you about is when you started doing this sort of a year and a half ago or whatever, did you think you'd be covering such a broad range of subjects? Because out of everyone that I'm listening to, you're bringing on the financial side, Janine, you're bringing on Penny Kelly, Cliff High, all sorts of different healers. You've got such a diverse range, and you're pulling all the different bits of the jigsaw puzzle together, aren't you?
Yes, and the answer was yes. That was my plan from the offset. And a lot of people told me, no, Jean-Claude, you have to start a channel. You have to choose a niche and stay in that niche. I'm like, I don't want a niche. I want to talk about everything. You know me, I want to talk about everything. So I planned my channel to be exactly that, a very broad tent, so I can talk about everything and talk to everybody, hopefully. It wasn't also about liberals or conservatives. I wanted to be able to talk across the aisles and prepare the show that way. And it was a difficult road of building this community, because for a lot of people, they were like angry at first. You know, they're used to maybe watching the news where every station of the news, they tell you exactly the same thing. And whereas they came on my show, like, well, they had somebody come here and they had one expression, and then the next day they have somebody else who had the opposite expression. I'm like, well, that's okay. Isn't that how we learn? Isn't that great that we can have these adult conversations together, even though we don't agree, and challenge maybe the things we think we know? So it's always been about that. But I think this year, I cranked it up a notch even more, just because of how crazy the world is. And I'm just responding to everything that's going on now. And you just mentioned the financial system. And I think that's in the forefront of everyone right now too. They're worried about what's going to happen to their wealth and their hard-earned earnings. Right now, everything seems to be in flux, and people are realizing every day, every minute, they're coming on my channel, they're realizing that people are lying to them. You know, on a daily basis. And they're like, oh my God, if they lied about this thing, maybe they're also lying about that thing and that thing. And it just keeps going. So these are the state of affairs we're in right now. It's pretty wild.
It's really just breaking open everyone's idea of reality. And, you know, we had a comment that I highlighted on the screen earlier about being in the matrix. But what level of the matrix are you feeling in at the moment?
That's a hard question to answer. I'd like to say I'm not in the matrix. I'd like to say that I've unplugged from it. But at the same time, I realize that I'm still part of one matrix that I can't decode. So if you look at the movie Matrix, when Neo wakes up, he realizes, oh, wow, that I was in a fake dream, and my body was being used as a battery. And now I'm in another area. But it takes a while for him to realize that this other area he's in is also, in a way, a construct. It's still a limited construct that he's in. So I think for most humans, that's going to be the challenge. And it's a challenge for me, because every time you get out of one box, you realize, okay, I'm free. And then you realize, hey, wait, am I still in another box that's just a bigger box encompassing the smaller box I was in? So this is what, if you want to call it, I don't know how to call it, but whoever the powers are on this planet, powers that be, just call it that for now. They've been doing this for who knows how long, right? So thousands of years of creating these little boxes. And so every time we think we're smart and we get out of one box, it takes us a while to realize that, oh, wait, there's another box. And so my mind is constantly, I don't want to say turmoil, but trying to figure out and wrap my head around the fact that, hey, I see another box there or another door there. Is it an actual door, or is it actually open? It's only my self-limitation that's preventing me from going through that door. Catherine, that's a whole show. So I'm not sure where you want to go with that question, but hopefully that kind of sets the stage there.
Yeah, it is a whole show, and it leads on to quite a few things that we're going to talk about today. And thank you so much to everyone who's watching. We're getting some brilliant conversations in the chat, which I'm trying to keep up with as well as listening to you. A lot of them, I'm getting echo. Can you hear the echo?
Nope.
No.
Bring down my speaker volume a little bit here.
If it gets bad, people, let us know. It seems to be on and off for me. But yeah, so this week has been explosive, hasn't it? You did your impromptu chat with Janine, because probably many people on this chat will have seen the Kim Grogan and Kerry Cassidy interview. I listened to it this morning. I also listened to the Penny Kelly, and I also listened to Cliff High stuff. So I've had a busy day trying to catch up on it all. Hi, Cliff, he's on the chat. So where are you sitting with all this? I know you're going to do a deep dive with Janine that I think you're recording later, but where are you at with this? Because there's some pretty hard-hitting stuff in there, isn't there?
Mm-hmm. Well, first, maybe an update for the audience. Janine and I were supposed to record last night, but because of our schedule, we weren't able to make it happen. So we're going to record that deep dive on the narrative that was presented by King Gogan on that Kerry Cassidy interview. We're doing that this evening instead. So folks, if you have already purchased your pay-per-view for that, it will be available later this evening, probably around 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock Eastern time. Where am I with that whole story? I mean, we were always anticipating that the closer we were getting to the end of this war, that the rhetoric would be turned even higher and higher. And we've seen that now over the last couple of weeks, over the last couple of months even, but now it's reached a fever pitch. And it's reached a fever pitch on both sides. On one end of the aisle, we're presented with Mr. T, perhaps being the son of a famous general. I'll try to watch my words here a little bit too. So we're getting Mr. T, perhaps the son of a general, and perhaps the bloodline of Christ, right? So on one hand, this is what we're presented, the whole savior complex, and on the other hand, we're like, oh no, actually he's the black son, and you know, it's part of a program, and it's, you know, we've all been conned, and so people are just going absolutely nuts right now on both sides because we've had such a year of mourning all the things that we thought we knew that we have to let go now. So your healthcare departments, your police officers, your government officials, your religion, everything right now, everybody's just like so fatigued of having to rethink what they think they know, and they're grasping by their fingernails at whatever reality they were able to kind of put together for themselves in their mind and in their picture of their worldview. And that now is also being challenged. And this is why we're getting all the stress, and where Janine and I are getting all of these emails. Oh my God, can you do a show on this? Can you do a show on that? And to some extent, Janine and I understand the fear and the trepidation. To some extent, we're all like, guys, you need to breathe. You have to understand that we're going to be manipulated till the last moment here. So everybody, this is the last war, this is the last ditch effort, and they're all trying to capture those souls, either bring back one soul across that line or bring the other soul across the other line. And the tactics are like, what's that expression? All is fair in love and war. So they're going at it full blitz right now. Now, in terms of, I don't know if you have specific questions on what I think of what Penny Kelly said versus what Cliff High was saying versus what Kim Gogan was saying. We can get into that conversation if you like, but please just direct me where you want to go.
Well, two areas I really want to go with that. Before we get into what you think about it, we've all spoken a lot over the last year about discernment and having discernment. And this is really testing people's discernment at the moment, because we really are getting these extremes of opinions. And when I listen to the information, I'm finding it absolutely fantastic listening to all the people we've mentioned, because it's really challenging me to keep an open mind and not get emotionally attached to any one of the outcomes. So when you're looking at discernment, how are you putting that into practice on a daily basis and growing your skills of discernment?
Well, the big thing is what you just said. Don't be attached to an outcome. If you're married to an outcome from the outset, chances are you're going to have trouble assimilating new information. And right now, that's the thing. We are moving into the age of Aquarius, and we are going to be challenged with much, much, much bigger load and bigger frequency of new information coming in. And this is our job as humans, as we're moving into this new area, to be able to practice that and hold that frequency or hold that charge of this new light or new information coming in. And for a lot of people right now, and again, this is a conversation I was having with Janine last night, they're fatigued with that already and they haven't hit the fever pitch yet, or we're about to hit the fever pitch. And for a lot of people, they just want to tune off right now. So I think that on one hand, whoever's running these operations, we can call them all operations at every level, whether they're good or bad, they're still operations. Whoever's running these operations, some of them at least appear to be wanting some of the population to disconnect from it. So either to not to choose or to go back on the fence. And this is my fear, because it brings people into the inaction mode as opposed to empowering themselves with their knowledge. So again, to answer your question, not getting married or not being married to a specific point of view. And again, I've tried to espouse that on my show since the beginning. I was asking questions way back when on this whole, 16 plus 1 minus 2 plus 2, like literal, all these things. And people were giving me flack. Oh my God, JC, you're an anti-patriot. I'm like, no, I'm just asking questions, guys. Like, I'm not married to it. Let's ask questions. Because here's the thing. I kept repeating on my show, listen, guys, you have to be intellectually honest with me. We've been duped time and time and time again. So I kept talking about the weapons of mass destruction from, the second previous administration, and then the whole yes we can, and you can keep your doctor if you want your doctor. And I remember saying to the audience, listen, I'm reading the policy here, and from what I'm reading, you can't keep your doctor. And everybody said, oh, JC, you're just a racist. I'm like, okay, I'm just reading the documents, guys. So let's get the facts straight here. So again, we were duped with the yes we can, and now here we are. And I always thought, oh man, this is a next level con. If it's a con, there's a lot involved here. And there was this new AI type of, Cliff High's on the screen, how it calls it the poet of war, which is these boards and these channels that were expressing a certain level of security clearance data for the audience to kind of decipher. So I always thought, well, is that a new con? There's a lot of things that are true in there. And if you followed and you did the homework and you opened your mind to where this was going, you could see that there was material there. But at the same time, we were all questioning, well, what's the end goal of that? Where are we going with all of this? And so here we are today, too. We're a year past the last election. We've been told over and over again, oh, Mr. T is coming back, Mr. B is leaving. And here we are in September, and that's not happened yet. And so all of these dates that all of these proselytizers on YouTube have put out have come and gone. And so again, there's a lot of people who are fatigued with all of that. So when you start talking about analyzing these comments and these storyboards, for a lot of the audience, as soon as you start talking, they're like, okay, here we go again. We're going to push that flag post down the line again. And they get fatigued with these conversations. So I'm also fatigued, like, to answer your questions. I'm looking at this too. I'm like, okay, when does it all end? When does it stop? And right now I'm like, it has to stop very soon. If you look at the level of rhetoric and the huge division and the mainstream media being behind the 8 ball on a lot of the news stories, you can tell that they've already lost control over the narrative. This happened already a couple of weeks ago, and it's just going to be glaringly more obvious to the audience as we go forward. So that is good news, but at the same time, it doesn't help the individual. The individual needs to stay grounded, needs to stay in their knowing, their inner knowing. They have to stop looking outside for external validation. Again, that's a big skill we need to learn. And from there, it's taking like small bites and deciding sometimes to maybe just step away for a day or two, of looking at the computer and maybe spending time in nature. I guess that's the best we could do right now. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it does. And I'm just looking at the comments, and there's such a diverse range, in terms of people, lots of talks about Kim, lots of talks about Kerry, lots of talks about Penny, etc. And everyone's got a different opinion. And so many people have been looking at Mr. T to come back as their savior. Mm-hmm. And we've been talking for a while about there being a spanner in the works with all of this. And the problem is we can't keep living our lives, can we, in terms of waiting for the next move. And we've spoken about this quite a lot. Mm-hmm. And there's lots of really good comments in the chat about what people are doing themselves. But questioning everything is still so important, as we both said. You've got to keep questioning. As soon as you just go hook, line and sinker on one narrative, then you're opening yourself up to being taken along potentially a wrong path.
Right. Well, what can I say? I'm looking at this from, if you step way back, and maybe this is where it can help the audience members as well. If you step way back, you realize that you're an eternal soul and you're just very temporarily living in this particular vehicle, the meat suit that you're occupying now, right? And when you think about it that way, it's like, oh, okay. it removes a little bit of the stress, right? Because when you're in it and you're in the war and you can't see anything else, you're like, oh my God, this world is batshit crazy. I'm going nuts. I can't understand anything that's going on. Everybody's lying to me. But when you step all the way back, you realize, hey, perhaps you actually chose to be here.
Yeah.
Perhaps this is the big show. Perhaps you have a mission. So what is that mission? So if you haven't asked those questions yet and you haven't figured out what your specific mission is in this whole play that we're in, maybe you need to start there. And once you get even an inkling of what that mission is, suddenly your whole perspective and dynamic changes. That frequency of fear disappears into a frequency of empowerment. Now you're driven. Now you're empowered. Now you have a goal to achieve. Now you're looking forward to tomorrow. You're looking forward to étapiste in French, to doing step by step and incrementally getting towards your objective, right? So it changes your perspective. So hopefully for some of the audience, that makes sense right now. And again, I understand the fatigue. Like I understand there's a lot of fatigue right now. But going back to all of these different narratives that are playing out right now, to me, I think if you step back, and again, if you look at whether it's Penny Kelly, Kim Gogan, Cliff High, at the end of the day, they all want the same thing. They want freedom for humanity. Each and every one. If you listen to Penny Kelly's last night interview as well, she says, okay, we're being gone, but at the end of the day, it's our job, and we want to create this new earth, and we could say bye-bye to the powers that be, and we need to work together to create what we want. I agree with that. I think everybody on this show agrees with that. Now, how we achieve that and how quickly we achieve that depends on if we're going to be entrapped in some of these operations that are currently underway. That's probably where the sticking points are. And so for the audience, I mean, Janine and you and I were talking about this on the last show. When we talk about Mr. T coming back, we're talking about repairing the old structures.
Yes.
And I kept saying this, and Janine kept saying this too. I'm like, well, no, we need to create new structures. And by design, all of these old structures that were born out of these old energies from the last era, they need to crumble. So when we're all focused on having Mr. T come back and fixing the old structure, we're not focused on creating the new. So in that sense, regardless of what character you're listening to on the internet and what their spin is on Mr. T or Mr. B or whatever, you still need to come back to, oh yeah, that's right. Actually, there's bigger things at play than those two characters, the polarity of those two characters. There's what we want and what we're willing to do to achieve those structures and those new creations that we want here on Earth for ourselves.
Yeah, it's just, we've spoken about this every time we've talked, and it's so important to remember that, because otherwise we're just caught in the continual trap of living for tomorrow rather than enjoying the journey and enjoying the now. So what have you enjoyed most about the last year and a half? What are some of the real highs for you?
Meeting you, meeting everyone on my channel, having these amazing conversations. I see Cliff High there is talking about the change of ages, and I can't click on them from my side.
Oh, right.
Putting them on the screen because you're running the controls. But yeah, what I've enjoyed the most this year is building this community, really, and having this community build me. And I have to be honest about that. Absolutely, that's true. When we do these shows like this live and we have this energy and everybody contributing, the feeling of I'm not alone, right? Maybe for the first time, like I've had these feelings before in my life. Okay, let's just backtrack. You and I have talked about this where, as kids, we kind of look like, we're different than everybody else. We've always struggled to kind of fit in, right? And a lot of the audience members understand that. But this is some of the beauty of the internet. When we came together here, we realized, oh, wow, there's a lot of us and a lot more of us than we think, at least a lot more of us than the mainstream media wants us to think, right? The mainstream media wants us to think that it's all bad people out there, and, the wokeism and all that completely outweighs the normal people. But really, we're understanding that we're the majority, and that it's what's beautiful about this, and what I've enjoyed the most about this year is that, one, that sense of community, and two, understanding that I wasn't alone too, and that was part of something that was bigger than myself. That to me was a huge gift in the last year.
It's fantastic, isn't it? And you look at, we talked throughout all this, and again, I'm looking at some really good comments in the chat about how, we are our own saviors. It's down to each of us and to really make a difference and put it out there. But I don't think it's ever been so obvious as it is now that it really is down to each of us. We can talk as much as we like about meditating, about manifestation, about creating our own futures, but now we're actually really having to put it in practice. And it's interesting seeing Darren's comments here. I mean, what's your thoughts on that? Enjoying the now is very important, but it's been cut down in size by the restrictions. Has it?
Well, yes, I mean, it has, but at the same time, it hasn't. There's pockets everywhere of you being able to be in the now without having to deal with officialdom. So it's just up to you to be strategic in the way you want to spend your time. What was that first part of the question? You said something else too that it triggered me to say something. I forget what it was.
I wonder what it was. We're talking about how it's all very well talking about manifesting, meditating, doing these things, but we really have to put it into practice. There's a lot of people that talk about they're going to do this, but aren't actually spending the time to do it. And I think it's been quite challenging for a lot of people. I mean, I started off the conversation today thinking, right, today I thought, God, I've really got to catch up on the Kim and Kerry, on Cliff's latest one, on Penny's latest one, because I'd seen all these chats going on about it. But equally, we've got to make time to listen to ourselves, haven't we? That's really, really important.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. No, you're absolutely right. And I think for me, in the last maybe couple of months, the being in the now was triggered for me. And I think I mentioned this on our first interview, where I realized I was getting this message that I needed to take more care of my body than I was doing previously. I was working a lot on the soul side and the spirit side in the triune mind, body, soul complex spirit, and not enough on the body. So I started meditating more, looking at my diet more, exercising more. And so far, that has put me into the now, because when you're doing that exercise or that focused meditation, you're very much crisp in the now, and you're not looking at whatever Carrie Cassidy and Kim Gogan are saying, right? So you have to find those pockets. But I think what you're saying to you is whatever's happened in the last year and a half is a catalyst for change for a lot of people. And so for a lot of people like you and I, we saw that catalyst right at the beginning. Boom, we started our YouTube channels. We started expressing ourselves. We started growing into and standing into our own mission. Some people are just now almost on that line to start to that too. So maybe we can use this opportunity in this show to encourage them to do that same thing, to get into that catalyst of change for themselves, whether that's spending more time in the now, taking more care of their body, taking more care of their friends, family, and their loved ones, of their finances, like really paying attention to what's important to them, as opposed to all of those outside validations that really don't matter at the end of the day. So, Catherine, again, these are really, I love your questions, because you're catching me in a, like, I'm very passionate about this, and at the same time, I'm trying to watch my words, and I'm trying to be polite. So there's two things.
It's hard censoring your words when you're talking about things you are so passionate about. It sort of does stop the flow, and it's really weird, because I wonder whether we're ever going to get back to talking normally again when all this ridiculous censorship stops. It does make me giggle, actually. But the passion is so important, isn't it? Because people have had a lot of tough times in terms of, it's really shown, it's brought to the surface with friends, with family members, some core value differences between people, between loved ones, between people that you're having to live with, etc. That's been one of the most challenging, I think, for people to navigate.
Like never before. You can't be on the fence anymore. Like, the system has forced us to choose sides, whether that's political or whether that's on the health situation. And it's created this huge divide. But at the same time, I hope that it's helping us become better humans and being more compassionate to the people who may not have made the same choice as you. And for that, again, I think you and I talked about this. The result of the other person's life is not our result. Our result is our soul contract, our soul mission. So yes, we have to share and we have to do what we're passionate about doing, but everybody else's life results are theirs to own, not ours, right? And that is a big lesson. And right now we're being forced that lesson also, because many of us, and I've explained this on the show before, I have family members who made a different decision than I did as it pertains to the thing. Mm-hmm. And I was struck by that. But at the same time, I had to come to the conclusion that, you know, It is their soul. It is their life contract. It's not mine. And it's best I could to share the information, which I did. At least I could say, hey, I did my part in all of this. The rest has to play out like it's going to play out. And I think for us, we've never really thought about these things before, because everybody kind of, not just that we were on the fence, but we're all in this weird dream of this fake reality where we were concerned about things that didn't really matter. And now we're forced to confront basically our death and what it is to be here and what's actually happening on this planet. We've never been forced to really look at that before. Although some people would wake up and question these things, and we've had luminaries, across the ages having these questions, and the poets who wrote books on this and stuff like that. Now it's down to every man, a corner of the street level. We have to think about this and contemplate these things. Even the people now who are on the other side, who took the other decision, they're also now contemplating these things. They're looking day by day at things that are coming through the mainstream media that the mainstream media has not yet quashed down, right? Because they're a little bit slow on the ball. And they're realizing, what's this thing all about, really, at the end of the day? What's going on here, right? They're asking these questions that maybe they never asked before. And so again, I think the biggest thing to answer your question is compassion. It's forcing us to understand that we're all different, but at the same time, we're all here, and we're all here for an experience, and we're all absolutely perfect the way we are, and we're all going exactly where we're supposed to go. So forcing anybody into any decision at this point, that's not our job.
It's really, really interesting, isn't it? Because I realized when this all came out about how judgmental I was being with family members that had I have family members that just absolutely banned me from participating in any of the chats or anything, because they said, we do not want to hear any of your opinions. You're just completely mad. You're the only person in the world that thinks like that. And I was like, oh, no, I'm not. There's others. There's more of us out there. It was hysterical. And then I sort of realized that actually my opinions about what I think might or might not happen, and interestingly, I'm speaking to Dr. Robert O. Young after speaking to you tonight, is they're just my opinions. We don't really know. We all think that we know certain things, but we don't know how it's going to pan out. We don't know what new technologies are in there. We really don't know, do we? And as you said, we cannot control other people's decisions for them. It's quite tricky where your children are concerned, because as a parent, you do take responsibility for taking a lot of decisions for your children until they're old enough to tell you to bugger off, don't
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I've had this conversation with the kids earlier this week too. And I see Cliff Eyes in the chat. He says, well, of course, Catherine is mad. And of course, Cliff Eye and I, we tease each other on this. And we're crazy, but it doesn't mean we're wrong. So,
exactly.
Going on that note, you talked about the family parties and your groups, not letting you chat and thinking you're absolutely mad. I went through the same thing. And again, most of the people in the chat here probably went through the same thing of maybe not being invited to the Christmas parties anymore. Because, oh, come on, stop talking about all those conspiracies. We don't want to hear it. Like, people don't want to hear things that, change their worldview. It hurts their head, right? That cognitive dissonance. And it came to a point, I have to admit, and I did a show about this on my first channel before it was, maybe it was on the second one, before it was deleted at any rate. And I explained to the audience, and I wanted to share this vulnerable moment with the audience, because I said sometime in, I think it was 2018 or 19, I got this close to kind of like, it's too hard to be outside in the fringe. I was questioning whether or not I had made this right decision maybe for the last 10 years, because I started, 2008, 9, this waking up process. And I was doing this, I was remembering this show from Star Trek when Captain Picard was captured by the Romulans, and he's being interrogated by the Romulans. And so what they're trying to do in this mind control thing with Picard is, well, first of all, they torture him, but at the end of the torture session, they ask Picard, hey, tell me there's 5 lights. And of course, Picard looks at the screen in front of him and says, no, there's just 4 lights. And every time they keep torturing him, okay, tell us there's 5 lights, right? So that the torture would stop. And I was like, I was almost there myself, just because what you just described there, the division with the friends, like losing all these friends over the years, the division with the family, just the feeling of being alone, not being in community. So when you asked me earlier, what was my biggest gift? Well, this whole community was the biggest gift. But anyways, I made that video to explain that for myself. I was like Picard, I was almost about to crack to say, okay, fine, there's 5 lights, or okay, fine, I'll accept this fake reality you guys are pushing down my throat. I'm gonna forget this woo side of things. And I hanged on just enough to find the world situation that we're in now that really galvanized me and said, no, there's 4 lights. I'm not budging. I know what I know. And to hell with everybody who doesn't agree. I have to do what's right for me. I have my inner knowing. So that galvanized me. But I wavered, just like probably everybody in the show now is also wavering when they're listening to, maybe the Kim Gogan narrative, or what they think they knew was just shattered again this last week. So I understand them. And again, biggest thing there would be compassion for all of them.
Yeah, it's a big learning for us. We expect them to show us compassion, and we need to do the same. Now, let's get into the nitty gritty then of, let's go back to the Kim and Kerry interview. Having listened to it, what are your thoughts? Where are you sitting with it?
There's a couple of moments in the interview where, and we don't have it on the screen here yet, but I'm going to use this in my conversation with Janine tonight in our deep dive. If you pause the video in a couple of places, it appears that there's a weird frequency that pops in to Kim while she's speaking.
Yeah.
So anyways, I'm going to show that on the screen later this evening if I can do that correctly while we're doing our interview. So that gave me pause for concern. So maybe we can backtrack. When I listen to new information, new evidence, new whatever it is, I typically try to not look at the screen. I'll close my eyes and I listen to the frequency of the voice.
Yeah.
And typically, when there's a drop in the voice or there's a hint of a blockage in the frequency of the sound coming out, it also appears on the screen. And so that happened a couple of times in that interview. Now, some would say, sometimes you're nervous in an interview, you change frequencies and all that. Okay, I get that, sure. But it's one data point. And for me, looking at Kim, I've seen this data point before in other interviews that she's produced in other segments. So that gives me pause for concern. Is it because everything is a total lie and that she herself is lying? I don't know. What I'm saying there, it's a pause for concern in terms of what information is that's being provided to me. So I just it's a red flag. So that, I guess that's the first thing. 2, there's a couple of things where she talks about having an eidetic memory or a photographic memory, and then she has trouble recalling a lot of evidence and a lot of dates and times and peoples and places during the interview. So I'm like, well, which is it? You either have a photographic memory or you don't. So that seemed a little bit odd to me. Again, it's not to say that her whole storyboard is incorrect or that she's lying. I don't know. And again, we'll get into that with the cards later tonight with Janine. But another pause for concern. Another thing, and perhaps here I'm wrong, and you guys in the chat, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I understood way back when, a couple of years ago, that Kim had said, and again, I could be wrong, so let me know, that she herself had cut off the head of Marduk. That was my understanding, I believe, in 1 or 2 videos. And I also understand that that was also Rice Crypto's understanding when he did an interview with Kim Gogan, or at least he had asked her about that, and he had recalled the fact that she had said, hey, I cut off his head. And he was dead. And the story she recounted to Kerry Cassidy the other day was, no, I kind of I blew him off and he fell on the floor, but he wasn't dead. But he died a few years later. So, okay, did I get that wrong? Maybe I got that wrong. But a couple of years back, I had heard that she had cut off his head. So right there, that's a huge glaring difference. And again, if I'm wrong in that storyboard, then okay, I do apologize. But that is at least my understanding of what I had heard before.
Yeah.
Could be wrong. Now, if I'm correct and she had said that before, then again, okay, whoa, that's a big red flag. That's a complete changing of the story. And for anybody listening to anybody here on alternative media or mainstream media, as soon as the story starts to change, there's manipulation in the storyboard. And there's tactics involved to change the narrative, or there's an ulterior goal or ulterior motive in place. So those are just a few to start with red flags that kind of made it hard for me to go through the whole interview. Now, that being said, I did go through the whole interview. Now we can get into the actual storyboard of her I guess, main gripe is that Mr. T is, of course, playing a role. And I agree he's playing a role. Yeah. I don't think he's playing the same role that she's describing, but I do agree he's playing a role. And so too does Cliff I and many others. We understand the big play here at work and this self-organizing collective fighting behind the scenes here, this spiritual temporal war that we're in now. Now, that being said, she's espousing the opinion that he is, in fact, basically controlled opposition and he's playing the savior, but really he's leading us into the squeeze gate, as Penny Kelly said in her video last night. Now, Carrie Cassidy, for her, she was pretty tough on all the questions, and I liked it because she kept saying who's they, like every time, like Kim was in the script in her language, Carrie would step back and, oh, okay, well, who you're talking about here, this one or that one, those group or that group. So I thought that was interesting because it was a little bit nebulous in this conversation here. So I like the way Carrie was handling that. Now, Carrie did say also that she didn't understand, or she didn't say she didn't agree, but she says that's not my understanding of what role Trump is playing. So we can say that for now. Now, do you want to ask me what my perspective is on? Yeah. Okay. I don't agree with that perspective. I'll say it flat out. I don't agree with it. Is it possible? Sure. At this point, anything's possible. And I think everybody who's in the audience now has to realize too, if we're going to be intellectually honest with ourselves, absolutely anything is possible. We've been duped time and time and time and time again, and even the best of us have been duped. So is it possible that he is in fact playing that role? Yes. What are the probabilities of that? In my view, they're pretty low, but it's still in the realm of possibilities. That's where I would sit with that. Does it change my worldview to the point where, oh my God, everything just crashed around me, I can't live? No, absolutely not. Because again, we started the show by saying, looking at Mr. T and Mr. B, the return, the departure, I don't really care. It's what humanity's doing to move forward that I'm really focused about. But at this point, too, I understand that for a big segment of the population who believes in Mr. T coming back in this whole external savior myth scenario, that is forcing them or preventing them from taking action because they're just staying back and, oh, Mr. T will come back and fix everything. Those people need to be addressed. And perhaps this op, because it is an op, they're all ops, is actually going to do that. It's going to make those people rethink the fact that they're waiting for something else to happen and they're not taking charge for themselves of their own lives and what they want the world around them to be. So I hope I'm answering your question. If there's more you want to ask.
Absolutely. And I just want to say, Silent Bliss here, it's unfair to badmouth her when she's not here to defend herself. We're not badmouthing her at all. We're discussing our opinions on an interview that was put up on a public platform. And every single person on this chat will have their own view on that. And I'm seeing loads of different views on it. Yeah, I personally found it a really uncomfortable interview to listen to because and I thought it shifted dramatically halfway through because personally I thought it was quite difficult for Kim to really answer the questions initially because of Kerry's style of asking. There's holding you accountable and there's asking a question in a way that to me sometimes comes across that you're not going to agree with the answer anyway. So all of us are going to hear it with different eyes based on our perspective. And I made the decision to keep listening despite that, feeling. And halfway through the interview, there was a huge shift in energy for me in terms of picking up what you were saying in terms of Kim shifting sort of energetically in that and whether she was getting more comfortable or whether there's something else going on. I'd quite like to watch it back and have another look because I do the same. I sort of listen and then I'll stop and look if something catches my attention. But, we are all going to have our different opinions. But I think what is important is that these discussions are happening. I think it's so important that people are having the strength of character to put out a different narrative and get people to still keep asking questions.
Mm-hmm. I agree. And to Silent Bliss again, As far as I know, I didn't say anything about Kim herself. I'm talking about her storyboard and some of the red flags that were coming out of the storyboard. So whether those are that's not bad mouthing a person. So I disagree with the premise there of the comment on the screen. Now I'm allowed as a human listening to somebody else who puts themselves out there, just as you're allowed to come out here and criticize my thinking. That's perfectly okay. And that's what Kathy is saying here. We're allowed to have these conversations and to question each other and to find, all the pieces of the puzzle so that we can build that picture together collectively. And if we all stay in this limited hangout over here, we're not going to build this bigger tableau. And this is why, again, when you asked me earlier on the show, why I have all of these people with juxtaposed views come on my show, is to do exactly that, to see where the pieces fit, bring them together, and where they don't fit. Most of the times, I don't throw them away. I put them on the side in case I can use them later on. Like, that's my way of thinking and building the bigger picture of my reality. But that's a learned process, and it's a difficult process for a lot of people. It's like, well, I don't like what you're saying, and they delete the content, and you're accusing somebody, or I'm accused of providing an ad hominem attack, as opposed to no, I'm just criticizing. If the storyboard doesn't match a past story, that's a big problem for me, and it should be a big problem for you listening to the show too. And that's not bad mouthing a person. It's just saying, well, she's got some explaining to do. Which of the story? And again, I could be wrong. Maybe I heard that part wrong the first time where she said she cut off his head. Maybe I got that wrong. And if I did, I do apologize. But I'm not the only person with that viewpoint. So there seems to be more of us that understood that was her storyboard in the past. Now, so if it has changed, it has changed. And you, the viewer, can use your own discernment there as to what that means. So do you want to move to Penny Kelly?
Yeah, so let's talk about the Pellichelli as well. So people now, in terms of people asking where they can find these, Project Camelot, you can find the Kerry and Kim interview. Andrea did pin it in the chat.
It's actually projectcamelotportal.com.
Okay.
Because somebody else used Project Camelot, I think, which is not hers anymore. So it's projectcamelotportal.com is her website. Yeah,
great. And you will find it if you search on it. So sorry, the comments are flicking through so quickly, it's difficult to put all the links in there. But yeah, let's talk about Penny's video from today. Now, Penny Kelly, you can find on BitChute, and all the links, if you find her on BitChute, you'll find her on Odyssey and on her website as well. So she's quite easy to find on those platforms.
Yep.
So how did you listened to her today and saying we've all been conned. How did you feel about that? I know you're speaking to her again soon as well, aren't you?
Yeah, she usually comes on every month for the Look-See, and she often comes as a guest on the other show. I have the Wacky Woo with Jason at 4, which I believe we're going to do this Friday night, I think, coming up. I haven't confirmed that, so just guys check my schedule here for the next couple of days. Well, first of all, I absolutely love Penny. So she's been on my show before, and we've agreed sometimes on things, and we've agreed to disagree sometimes on things. And I've always loved the fact that we could absolutely have these conversations where we didn't have the same viewpoint, but at the end of the day, we always had the same goal. It was the freedom of humanity and where we go moving from here. And so I have to commend Penny on that as well. In that last video that she came out with, the September 5, I think, video, she actually says that. It's all about that. This is where we're going, and this is where we need to unite and decide what we want and say bye-bye to the powers that be, or Mr. Global, wherever you want to call them. We don't care about you anymore. We're moving forward. Now, she believes that Mr. T was part of that con and that he was leading us through the squeeze gate, I believe, or the words that she says. That's her opinion. And how can I attack an opinion? That's her opinion at this point, reading the information that she's reading. And for that, I have to say, well, okay, I can agree that that is your opinion, and I can respect that. It's not mine. I still, again, there's a possibility of it, and I'm not so hard-headed to say, absolutely, you're wrong, and no, you're wrong about that. I can't bring myself there. Not just with Penny, even with Kim going, I can't bring myself there. Actually, well, let's hold on Penny Kelly for just one moment. Let's go back to the Kim Gogan storyboard. If you remove the Mr. T part, the whole overstructure of the ET alien interference on this planet, there's a lot there for the audience to listen to. And this is why, again, when Janine and I did a decode on Kim Gogan 4 or 5 months ago, again, I think it was on my previous channel and it was deleted. We came up with, it's complicated. It's not all throw it all away with the baby with the bathwater. There's a lot there. And in my show for tonight too, I point to a lot of the things that she said. She said that opens the eyes to a lot of people to the reality of this world. The reality is we don't live in an enclosed system. So people who think that our financial system is here and local to their planet, they're completely wrong. And that's why they never understand why the people in charge do the things they do. It's because a lot of these resources are being siphoned off the planet. And it's because they're being directed by off planet also to do some of the things that they do. And so in that storyboard that she was talking about, there's a lot in there that resonated absolutely correctly, not just because she's repeated that before, because Kim has been at this speech for this narrative for quite some time. I'm talking about the alien interference, but from other luminaries and remote viewers and poets around the globe who are also understanding the fact that we have been messed with. And so she's contributing a very important part to the conversation, Kim, that is. So again, going back to that person who said I was bad-mouthing her, okay, well, hold on a second here. She's also contributing to the conversation here. So you might not like part of that conversation, and maybe that part, okay. Maybe part of that conversation is to have us all talk about her so that we all talk about the ET component of it. It could be an advertising tactic. You know how they say, no bad news, what's that adage? There's no such thing as
bad publicity.
Right. Yeah. So maybe she is running an op, but the op is not what you guys think. Maybe some people are thinking, oh, she's running an op to poo-poo all the Mr. T supporters and to demoralize the troops. Maybe. But maybe her doing that is making it so that all these other YouTubers are talking about her interview. And really the crux of that interview is understanding our place on this planet right now and who's interfering with our trajectory. So in that sense, that interview is absolutely important to listen to, in my viewpoint. And so now let's go back to Penny Kelly. Same thing with Penny Kelly. She sees the big picture. Penny and I did that video, ETs and human trafficking, a couple of months ago on our pay-per-view. Absolutely exploded. This video, absolutely popular. We couldn't put it on YouTube just because of the nature of the conversation there. But again, she's seeing the big picture of what's happened to our planet. And for most people, if they're looking into this paradigm of Mr. B leaving because Mr. T is going to come back and fix everything, they missed the whole point. That's a very low level of the game of confusion that's being brought upon us. Even though it's high level right now, it's a low level con compared to the big con that has been put upon us by these external forces. And I think this is where a lot of our time, especially the people who can have this conversation as adults and agree to disagree things, because we're all scratching in the dark when it comes to ET interference. We're like, what manual do you go read to see who's who? You can't. Oh, presumably, NATO was it NATO Supreme Command had a book in World War II that explained who all these characters was. But we, the population at large, we don't have any place to go to read about what's really happening to us at those high levels. So we are scratching in the dark, but we are still very psychic. A lot of us have had ET experiences. This is why I bring a lot of experiencers on the show as well. Some I agree with, some I don't agree with. But again, we're trying to bring the picture together of who these people are, what they want with us, what they've done to us, and how we can extricate ourselves from that control. So both from Penny's point of view and from Kim Gogan's point of view, that conversation is absolute to me. I believe is actually important, and not just to me. I believe it's important for all of humanity. It's the bigger picture, because if we just stay at the low level con and we get duped at the low level con, we're still not fixing the overarching issue of this manipulation of planet Earth.
Here, I agree with every word of that, and I think sometimes we get. I know I said it earlier on in our conversation, but sometimes we throw the baby out with the bathwater. We can hear some absolutely brilliant, thought-provoking information, and we pick on the one point that we disagree with and then chuck it all away. And I think this is a type of habit that we've got to break. I mean, I've always been quite unusual amongst my friends because I love a good, passionate conversation about things. And I don't see it as an argument at all. I find it really interesting, really fascinating. But so many people find that confrontational or argumentative. And I want to hear everyone's different views because there's so many things over the last year that I've changed my mind on that I never thought I would have changed my mind on. So it's the whole thing is fascinating. I'm really grateful that these people are all speaking up and giving their honest perspectives, or okay, take the word honest out, giving their perspectives, whatever it's from, because we've got to keep this questioning. Otherwise, we're not going to progress from where we were before.
Completely agree with you. And you know what? There's a comment on the screen if you scroll up from Soulful. It says, "Hi everyone, Jean-Claude, please bring Elena Danaan back on sooner rather than later. Also, Dr. Michael Sala." Okay, I interviewed Elena Danaan 3 times. So we did a 3-part series book review on A Gift from the Stars, Alien Races, her book from Elena Danaan. I thought this was absolutely critical for everyone to understand this because it was a really good starting point to have these conversations. And now, so too is the conversation of who and what is the role of the Galactic Federation. Now, for some contactees, their point of view is they're all love and light. And some for other contactees, their point of view is actually, it's a little bit more complicated than that. There's a lot of groups in there. Sometimes they change allegiances. They have politics, as above, so below. So we have to use discernment. And again, what do we know? We're just little humans. And when we have ET experiences, we have a frame of mind from the color of our glasses, of our education, of our religious backgrounds, all of these things to interpret what's happened to us. But that doesn't mean that that's reality. So when contactees come on my show, I come from the standpoint of, I want to hear your experience the way you've experienced it. And that stands for me. As long as I don't think you're lying to me, bull-faced lies to my face, I want to hear what you have to say. And so too does the audience. And so when it comes to deciding and understanding what the hell's happening, who's this overarching group above us that's really in control of this planet, way above all of these low-level cons, you know, from Mr. T, Mr. B, the papacy and the royalty, all of that. Those are low-level cons compared to what's really happening on this planet. I think we need to have those conversations. And I got flack for that because at some point I had people on my guests who said, oh no, the Galactic Federation is love and light. And then at some point I said, well, it's a little bit more complicated. And people had huge issues with that. Just like they have issues if you're a Mr. T supporter and then you tell them, oh, maybe he's the Black Sun. They have issues with that. And I said it. Again, it's that fatigue that we have here, and we're all trying to grasp through this reality. But this is another reality that we're going to have to tackle if we are really going to become free. Otherwise, we're just moving the chairs on the Titanic with Mr. T, Mr. B. It's all going to be the same shit show all over again. We really need to go look at whoever that bug is. If you listen to Cliff High's videos, the mantis and all that, whoever the bug is, right? Or whoever those bugs are. That's the real question. And so Elena's welcome back on my show anytime. I absolutely adore her. I think she does amazing work. And so too are the other contactees who have different points of views. And again, this is very nebulous. You think the politics is nebulous, but that's easy compared to the ET stuff. And again, I just don't like being forced into a corner. Well, you shouldn't interview that person because that person disagrees with that person. And I get that sometimes on the show. And I get why some of the audience members want to say that. I get it. But I don't live by that. It's my show. First of all, you can go do your own YouTube show. You can do your own YouTube show and decide who you want to interview. But 2, I'm driven to share this information and to bring it all together because I want to know. And I hope that in my journey of trying to making this puzzle a little bit bigger and clearer for everyone, it not just helps me, but it helps everybody watching the show. That's why I do the things that I do on my show.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And that's why I enjoy listening to you so much. I cannot believe the hour has gone already. But I've got one more question to ask you before I'm going to let you go. We've had brilliant interaction from everyone on the chat today. Thank you so much for everyone for joining us. This is what makes it so special. And Jean-Claude, you gave me the confidence to start using this technology. So thank you.
You're welcome.
But before I go, I think I've asked you this before, but what are you really hoping for the foreseeable, for the right now, for you, for your family, for you personally? What are you working on? Where are you putting your energy?
Could you be a little bit more specific? I heard your question, but I heard 5 different
so rather than
where you want to go with that.
Right. So for you personally, what is your focus for the immediate now? Not necessarily to do with your show, but for you personally to really, what are you working on for yourself?
Right now, I'm in preparation mode. So if you were to put it this way, if I were in the military, I would be, or in the Navy, I would be battening down the hatches. I'm making sure my preps are leveled up, and I'm making sure that my mind, soul, body complex, spirit body complex is strong. The triune is strong. I've been guided to do that. So I'm in this very, very driven part right now to be ready, because I feel that something big is just around the corner. What that is exactly, precisely, we didn't even get into the remote viewers here for what they see for September. Maybe that's going to be for our next week's show or the show after that, Catherine. But I feel there's something big around the corner, and I feel responsible, first of all, for myself, to be at the maximum, highest potential of myself, so I can deal with whatever is being thrown at me. And 2, of course, I'm responsible for a family. I have kids, and I have my parents who are in their 70s. They live a couple of houses down, for who I also take care of. And so my mindset right now is being strong here and leveling up our fortifications, if you want to call it that way, for everything. So whether that's your vitamins, your foods, your water, everything, your mindset, this is the big thing. Your body, of course, your health is very important. If you don't have that, you don't have anything else. So right now, that's a big, big, big priority, Catherine. And now on top of that, if you want to add the show, where the show lands and all of that, for now, I'm holding the line. So the priority with the show is holding the frequency. That is the biggest thing I'm trying to do right now with all of these conversations, because I understand that some of the audience are being triggered, stressed, broken by the narrative and the huge chasm between the different narratives that are being pushed out right now. The Jesus thing versus the Black Sun thing is just one example of those. And so I'm trying to do shows right now, in some cases where I'm doing meditation, remote healing shows, just conversations like this, again, just to calm people down and understand that, okay, we're not alone. Yes, this is complicated, but we can work these through. As humans, if we talk and we let each other talk, even though sometimes we don't agree, we can get through this. So a big part of my show right now is holding the line for that frequency that we've captured, because we have captured quite a bit in this last year of mind-controlled souls that have now come to our side, right? And they're still wavering because they're new at this, and they're still kind of afraid of the woo, if you want to call it that. But we don't want to lose them back to the other side, right? So we have to hold on and hold their hands a little bit. Maybe sometimes that's annoying, I understand. But and I get flack again. Sorry, we're going a little bit long here, but I get flack sometimes in my interviews because I do too much setup for my questions to my guests. And I'm like, I do that because I know the question, I know the answer, and I know the answer is going to maybe trigger a lot of you. So I try to smooth things out, because we're having these weird conversations that a lot of people are not used to having, especially the new people who are coming on my show. I need to respect them just as much as the people like Glass Effects, who's on the screen now. He's been here since day one of my show. He's up to speed on everything. So I understand he wants me to go, and he's not the one arguing with me, but I'm just saying there are people from all walks on these channels, and we have to try to hold that frequency for everyone. That's what I'm trying. And where it goes from there, maybe the last frequency I heard from your question, my show is going to transform as humanity and the situation on the planet transforms. I see that. Where it goes exactly, I have an inkling. I think part of it is more going to be geared to traveling, to sharing the frequencies of different locations live while I'm doing shows, interviewing people live in person, thing like that. So I think it's going to go there, but that's not even possible for me right now. Everything's on lockdown. I can't fly anywhere. So eventually it'll go to that. Yeah, I think that's a 3-part answer to your question. So, sorry, I was long on that.
No, it's absolutely brilliant. I've been definitely preparing. I've got the children, I've got the animals, I've got my mum and things. So preparing is a good one for me because it stops me worrying. And once I've got the houses in order, so if there's anyone near to me that can set up some solar panels for my guinea pig heating lamps, call me. So, but no, it's very good advice because there's things that we can do to make ourselves, whatever it is, to make yourself feel more comfortable and to not flip into that fear vibration. So important. I could talk to you all night. I really could. Let's get another one in the diary soon. Thank you so much. Now, just before we go, for anyone listening on my channel, how can people support your work?
You can find me at Jean-Claude at BeyondMystic 3 on YouTube. That's our third backup channel. We're back up and running. And for those of you who perhaps were members of our Patreon group, of course, you might not know if you haven't checked your Patreon in a while, we were terminated over there for silly reasons. I don't need to get into it, but we've recreated the Insider Access Pass to all of our uncensored content, which is now located on our BeyondMystic.net website. And that's where you'll find all of the uncensored Tarot by Janine episodes and much, much more. All of the stuff that, you know, we keep getting our channels deleted for talking about, you can find on BeyondMystic.net. And there you're looking for the Insider Access Pass. You can either buy à la carte, one episode at a time at $1.99 for most of them. It keeps us going. And of course, I have to pay for these server fees to get this content up there. It's not free. You know, that's the fight against censorship. But if you're already buying a lot of those episodes and you want to maybe support us a little bit more, you can just get the Insider Access Pass. So of course you'll get the whole year of the episodes, and you get those episodes before everybody else.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I love them. So thank you so much for tonight. It's whizzed by. Thank you so much to everyone who's participated in the chat. Really good interaction between you all. Really lovely. And we will be speaking again soon.
I love you, Catherine. See you soon.
Take care. Bye.
Merci beaucoup.